So thanks to everybody for joining us tonight for this Tulane Family webinar on supporting your student through academic planning and course registration. So this is material that's presented to help everybody at this particular point for their students who are getting ready to register for their spring 2026 courses. And so we're happy that you've joined us tonight. My name is Penny Wyatt. I'm the Director of Family Programs. I am really happy to turn things over to my colleague, Heather Cooper, so she will introduce herself a little bit more, and then I'll join you when it's time for Q&A.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Cooper. I didn't update my slide. I'm actually officially the director now of college advising at Tulane. I've been here for almost 13 years, first as a frontline advisor, then a trainer for our department, an assistant director, clearly an associate director, and now a director. So I'm really excited. I've worked in education for over 20 years. I've taught, I've advised, and I am really excited about kind of higher ed and education generally. So I really love talking to you all, and I really love talking to your students. I do have a junior in high school, so maybe I'll have to attend one of your webinars about getting a student to this point in freshman year of their first year at college. So the purpose of tonight's webinar is to just give you some information, resources, and advice to help support your students as they engage in planning for and preparing for their spring and summer course registration. Tonight, I'll talk a little bit about our advising model at Tulane, who the advisor is, and which advising office to go to. It feels a little complex, certainly for students who are navigating this for the first time. So it's important for me to show you that kind of piece of the puzzle. What we see as our advisor role and responsibility in registration, and what the student role and responsibility is in registration. How you, of course, can support your student through that registration process. Oftentimes, this is the first time they're really doing registration fully on their own in this really tangible, hands-on way. Our summer process was very different in many ways, although they did navigate the registration and have to think about it. This time they're really starting from scratch, which can be a little overwhelming, as you may already know, for some of them. I'll give you some of the resources that I use regularly to advise your students, and of course, resources that are available to your students to both find answers to their questions, but also to connect with our office. And as Penny says, my favorite part, answering the Q&A at the end. So how are we structured here at Tulane? We have lots of people who are called advisors and coaches at Tulane. Newcomb-Tulane College is the undergraduate home of the university. This is where all full-time residential undergraduates attend, and when they leave here, they have a Newcomb-Tulane College degree in conjunction with the school that they are graduating from. So college advising is my office. We live in Newcomb-Tulane College. My colleagues include Success Coaching, which is a small but mighty team of folks who can work with students with executive functioning and organizational skills around their studies. We have career coaching that supports students through their goal planning for future not past registration, past college kind of pursuits. Study abroad advising lives in our Center for Global Education, and that is specific to programs and the living abroad experience. So that is a different advising office that usually works with students. Most students at Tulane are studying abroad junior year, so a lot of times that office is working with students during their sophomore year. And we also have fellowship advising in Newcomb-Tulane College that works with students on post-graduation grants like Fulbright and Rhodes Scholars. Within my office, we have a couple different avenues of support from advising. First and foremost, we have our first year advising team. This team of six staff advisors works with all first year students. After the first year, students graduate to one of our continuing advising teams, We in our office are generalists, so we work with students kind of across all the boards. You probably know well that students can do lots of different majors throughout lots of different schools at Tulane. That makes our job really rewarding, but also really tricky. So we are the generalist advisors that students start with. And the first year team kind of gets them grounded in where they're going with their prereqs and how to get started there. And then our core college advisors make sure that students are meeting their core curriculum requirements, meeting with their departments, declaring their majors with their departments, and graduating at the end of the next few years following their tenure. Our pre-professional advisors actually work with pre-health and pre-law students all 4 years of their undergraduate, and many of our alum work with this office as well as students prepare for the rigorous application processes that are involved with their postgraduate work. And then we have an awesome team of student advisors, our peer college advisors. Right now, we have a team of 9 students across different disciplines who work mostly on a drop-in basis and are in Mustapher Hall. But they love working with students and love giving them all the ins and outs and showing them how to push the buttons and set up a schedule and all of the ins and outs that are important to them. So that's what college advising is, and that's the team that I oversee. So, what is the advisor expected? Now, remember, advisor in college advising, what are we expected to do at registration? We're supposed to be expected to be the kind of experts on the NTC core curriculum. What are the requirements students are needing in their first year and beyond before graduation? We're here to support decision making, so giving the students information so that they can make decisions that are right for them in the moment. We often will find ourselves encouraging balance. So I've got some hyper-focused students who are like, I want to be in business, so I want to do all business classes all the time. And I'm like, that's great, but you still need a lab science and a language class to graduate. So let's make sure we kind of balance those in there. Or hey, maybe taking all of those lab science classes in one semester isn't as necessary as being sane. So encouraging balance is something that we talk about a lot in our meetings. Some students are very aware of this, and some students are like, oh, that's a really good idea. So those are conversations that we have in our offices. We do make course recommendations, but honestly, most students are better experts at all of the courses because they've been in the courses, they've spoken to their friends. We make course recommendations based on curriculum requirements and based on new and exciting classes that have kind of come across our desk or that we see on the class schedule that we're excited about. So course recommendations will come from us, but we certainly are not the only source of course recommendations. I know you and your students probably have lots of different ways of exploring which courses are out there, what classes other students have enjoyed. There's plenty of information flying around. Oftentimes, what we're here to do is to make sure everybody has the right information and make sure the students understand how those courses will apply to their plan moving forward. We also do a lot of referring of students. As much as I'd love to have all the answers to all 100 departments that Tulane has, we don't always have that, right? Sometimes a specialist is needed either for transfer credit or something, or like fellowship advising. Those kinds of specialists are things that we can talk about generally, but we definitely want to get you in front of the person or get your student in front of the person that can tell them all of the details. Oftentimes, students who have lots of majors and minors and things they want to do will need to talk to lots of different people to make sure all of those major and minors are aligned. I consider it my role and the role of my advisors is to make sure students have the right questions at their fingertips so that they can go into those meetings and into those conversations with the right terminology and the right mind frame to understand, hey, if I was a student, this is what I would be asking if I were you going into that situation. So a lot of times we're referring, but we're trying to give them a few tips and tricks to talk to those offices with so they ask good questions when they have those meetings and make those meetings more effective moving forward. Certainly, we suss out in our meetings how students are doing and what other resources might be necessary. So a student coming in with high anxiety about registration it can be pretty quickly clear that it's nothing about registration going on, it's something else going on. So oftentimes I'll refer to it like, hey, I'll talk to you about the classes, but I also want you to connect with the counseling office, for example, or maybe you should talk to somebody in this office. They can support you through this external thing that's happening that really is outside your academics, and I can help you kind of build a schedule that will be as flexible as possible given what you're sharing with me, right? So connecting with resources that are quite serious in the example I'm giving, but also to things like success coaching, like, hey, it doesn't sound like you're not working, you're working really hard, but you're struggling with motivation. Maybe you need to talk to one of our success coaches or just make an appointment with one of our tutors. And then we've become quite good, whether we want to or not, at addressing different registration issues because we kind of end up seeing it all in our office. So advisors will look for registration issues and teach students how to proactively scan for issues in their schedules that might pop up. So the student role, remember I don't have a slide that says the parent role, right? And you're here to support. The students are responsible for kind of being aware it's registration time first and foremost. Identifying when their registration ticket time is. Every student at Tulane is given a ticket time for registration, which means the time that their registration opens. Once that time opens, it remains open. It is not a window of time. In the summertime, we had a bit of a window. Once their ticket time passes, their registration is open and they can add and drop through their heart's content all the way through the first couple weeks of the next semester. But they should know what their registration ticket time is. It's posted all the way across lots of different things, but the Gibson portal and their registration page both show exactly what time they should register for classes. The student is also responsible for noticing in the same banner or nearby banner that they may, or if they have any holds. 99% of the time, holds are fully communicated through email in terms of what the hold is and why, or action needed and who to contact. A lot of that information will live in a student's email. But the hold is also a banner across the top of their Gibson portal. And I think it's across their class registration as well. I'm hesitating because I don't get to see what it looks like as a student, but I believe it shows if there's any holds on their registration page as well. It's up to the student to consult the academic resources across campus. So again, if you have a go-getter student who has lots of different majors and minors and questions, my office will be happy to get students started and say, look, these are the prerequisites for these different majors. That's what I'm going to have you focus on. But if they have really minute questions about, well, what do I do when I study abroad in 2 years and those kind of things, or should I do this part of the major or that part of the major? They're going to have to kind of move into talking to departments, consulting the catalog, which has lots of great information, and consulting their degree audit, which should give them a little bit of an idea of the things that they have remaining going forward. So just knowing what those resources are is something that they're a skill that they are still building, but something that we do expect our students to kind of be aware of. The DegreeWorks audit is a little less useful for my early students than it is my later students because it is all the things that they need to get to graduation. And of course, there's a lot of things that are needed when you're only one semester into a supposed 8 semester experience. So the degree audit is great, but it is only a tool. And I recommend using the degree audit next to the catalog entry for specific majors and minors at the same time. I find that the list, and I think you will too, I find that the list of classes often available to me on the catalog are easier to understand in a checklist format than the audit is, because the audit is programmed to show every class that can fill each category of classes. So that can get a little overwhelming for students. So starting with the catalog, but knowing what the audit is and knowing that it exists and starting to use it will be a good registration 101 for your students to build into this semester. On the class schedule where they build their classes, they can build planners. These are just wish lists. These are not, this is not the actual schedule that they may be able to register for. It hopefully might be, but it still has, they still have to get to the registration date. I have students who build these beautiful planners and they imagine themselves waking up at 11 and going to class at noon and all these wonderful things. And then they get to registration day and they're like, but the only class is 8 a.m. What am I supposed to do? And I say, well, you have to register for the 8 a.m. That doesn't mean you have to take the 8 a.m. because you still have 2 months before classes start. So it might work out that that dream class, that preferred class is still available, right? But for the day of registration, I want students to get the classes they need to progress with their degree, and then they can meet with us afterwards to talk about what's working or not working with the schedule they ended up with. But having prepared planners and class wish lists will help them feel more prepared because they will have done all the sorting of classes prior to registration. And they just want to clear their schedules for a few minutes at registration time to be able to go ahead and press submit registration and have an open mind and be flexible. Like if they have to grab that 8 a.m. just to make sure they're in a econ class, I'm okay with that. We can still make changes, but for the day of registration, I want them to just be prepared, register for a full-time 12 credit schedule, and be on their way. So how to prepare, I've kind of hit a few of these while talking in the last slide. How to prepare for registration. So your student can start with a list, and Penny, I know, is going to supply you with some of the direct links that I've provided here. And I think I have a slide at the end that does the same. But we first want to start with their wish list of classes, right? Looking through the catalog, picking out classes that seem to be early classes in each of their majors, looking at their audit, seeing what they've covered and not covered, and using the class schedule to kind of put their wish list. It's kind of like an Amazon shopping cart. You can just kind of like, oh, that sounds like a cool class. That sounds like a cool class, and not worry if they conflict or anything like that. Because really, at the point they're looking through the class schedule, they're really just kind of putting things into the cart that sound interesting, and then they can go back and edit down. So this is a good process, I think, for them, just to kind of practice using the software itself, but also looking at the options that fulfill different requirements. We always have our advising website. The registrar has a website about registration and navigating things like holds and the registration software. And then, of course, each department also lists different people for contacts and major, um, yeah, no, it's fine. And major requirements. So I think those three places, I think advising website and the department website often does what a student needs to like figure out some questions. We, as college advisors, are happy to answer questions. Pre-professional advisors can be talked to before or after registration. It's not like I registered at 11 o'clock. I need to have my advisor, my pre-professional advisor, and everybody in the same room at 11 o'clock. It's more, I want to do the best I can at 11 o'clock. And then if I have remaining questions, go back to those resources and use them. And then, of course, the peer college advisors are here and on call, and they're online, and I'll talk about their availability a little later. But all of these places are great places for questions. Once they finalize a planner and said, okay, these are the things I definitely need, these are the things I'd like to take, and these are the things that are my backups to the backup, they should start keep an eye out for course availability. So actually making sure the classes that they have in their cart have seats in them. Look for errors on their registration page. Any yellow error message on their registration page will be an indicator that will stop the registration process. So they want to either get rid of those classes or fix those errors before that time ticket opens up. And like I mentioned a few times already, having backup options will make them feel like, okay, if I can't get this, I'm going to get this. Having some backup options that they're happy with will make them feel a little bit more confident as they register. During registration, so during that moment prior to their ticket time, so my example was like 11 o'clock on a Thursday, they open their computers at 10 o'clock and they look through and see, okay, this class filled up, but I really need it, and this is the only section, so I'm going to add myself to that wait list. This class filled up, but it's chem and there's like five other sections, so I'm just going to go find another section of chem and clean that up. Or this looks good and this looks good, but now these two conflict. So now, in order to fit that new chem class, I'm going to go ahead and bring this in. So while that sounds really complicated, it's a very normal part of the registration process to kind of add it and work it together just a few hours before their registration time so that they feel more confident at when the 11 o'clock hour shows up. At 11 o'clock, in my example again, not everybody will be registering at 11. They will press submit registration. No error messages means that all of the classes with seats will go through. And then they can check their current schedule planner, which is another tab in the registration system that allows them to see the classes and verify. This is a really big point. They can verify their final schedule there. So it kind of goes planner, registration page, and then the current schedule, what they actually enrolled in. Because remember that planner is more like a shopping cart. It's not real until you pay for it. So how can you support your students? I'm meeting with lots of first year students right now. It's just really fun for me because I haven't gotten to do that every semester, but I have gotten to do that this semester. And one of the things I wish I had like a whole extra half hour with your students is to just reflect on the classes that they like and that they're enjoying and that they're excelling in and what they're really not liking, or just helping them kind of sort through kind of what they've learned so far in their first semester in college. I do touch on these questions in our meetings, but the reality with a registration appointment is we also need to kind of cover the things that I just talked to you about. And we also need to make sure that they leave with a list of classes they can work with. So if you can help your student kind of reflect on what's working or not working in terms of their larger schedule, the times, the balance, the direction they're going. Some of you probably have students who know exactly what they're majoring in, and that's exactly where they're going to be 4 years from now. And others of you might have students who are exploring different things. So just helping them reflect a little bit on what's working and what's not can help them walk into a meeting with one of us a little bit more prepared to have those conversations when we do ask. Discussing their academic plans that might require additional time or expense. So this might be times like summer school. Maybe your student does want to do three majors and maybe only two and a half fit into 4 years that they have allotted for. So if doesn't mean they can't do all the things, but it might mean that they might need to take some of that work to the summer semesters, which will be a different kind of financial question than just the fall spring, which most scholarships and everything only fall under fall spring. They don't cover summer classes. So summer classes need to be discussed. Any study abroad programming would need to be discussed, and any internships that your student might be planning. So those are conversations that really should start with the family and the people who are supporting them with either financially or just kind of mentally through these processes, weighing these kind of decisions. Referring them to our website for certain resources. Of course, our appointment options are also on our website, including our virtual advising links and our peer advising links. So getting them to look through our websites and frequently asked questions will also be helpful. Reminding them that we do have virtual advisor or drop-in advising. So like I said, we can't all meet with students exactly at the time of their registration, but if they're really panicking, we do have drop-in options. And we can kind of sort through those quick questions as needed. And the most important thing is to help your student not to panic. I have a really good friend who has a student at another university, and she's been calling me all the time, and she's really heightened, and she's like, I don't know what to do. My daughter's my daughter's doing this and this. And I said, like, you're going to have to be the calm one here so that, because she's going to have to figure it out. And we do have, remember, if you have your own worries about all of this, remember that we do have a few months before next semester begins to help massage the schedule into something that works best for everyone. But helping them manage their expectations, stay flexible, and kind of getting out of that panic phase that a lot of them are in. I know registration panic has little to do with registration itself, but it's also the fact that they're in the middle of a very busy, very difficult semester and they have a lot of things going on. So registration being in the middle of that is not exactly a picnic for them. So here are a few tidbits to help remember, where flexibility and options can come. Most majors and minors at Tulane are flexible, and there's lots of time to make adjustments over time and before the start of the semester. So if there are very structured majors like engineering. You have to take Chem 1 in the fall and Chem 2 in the spring. Those kinds of things are set. But whether or not this communications class or that communications class is taken this spring or next fall is usually very flexible. Trying to get through a list of requirements. I love my students who are like, I want to get everything done this year. And I was like, that's great. But is that going to allow you to explore different majors? Like if you only do required classes for the core curriculum, are you also going to be exploring the different majors that you want to look at? I want students to kind of get things done, but also be moving towards the classes that they might need for their prospective majors. Your student may make schedule adjustments all the way through the first 2 weeks of the semester. The add period is always ends the Friday after the first 2 weeks into the semester. I can't remember the date for spring. I can look right now is the last date to add a new class is January 23rd. I always recommend students have some backups in mind to their registered schedule for the first week in case they walk in and they're like, this is the bad fit. I don't need to take this right now. And they want to change classes, they can do that in the first week of class. So while the deadline's all the way into the second week, I do like to see students more or less attending the classes they plan to take as much as possible in that first week so they feel like they're on par with their peers. So a few tidbits. Priority registration is what we call this 2-week period that began on November 3rd and ends on November 14th. This is a period in which all the registration times open for each of the students. Schedule changes are allowed, like I mentioned already, all the way through the add deadline of the upcoming semester. Ticket times, which is the registration opening for each of student, are based solely on earned credit hours at the college level. So if first year students are here and they brought in a bunch of AP credits and they're in 18 credits, they're still starting at 0 credits because AP credits don't count towards these credits earned. They do count, but they don't count towards the calculation of a time ticket. If students bring in dual enrollment credit, that does count as earned college credit and can impact their ticket registration time. A majority of first year students are registering in the last 2 days of registration, and those dates are equally distributed by a lottery system to each student. So most of the people with 0 credits, which is about 2,000 students, will have ticket times that are randomly given out. There is a website on this. You can read about how many credits for what, but at the end of the day, most first year students are registering around the same time period. What should students be aiming for? What should they be registering for? 12 credits is full time. 12 credits or higher is full time. That's required for majority of scholarships. That's required for anybody in Newcomb-Tulane College. So being full time is 12 credits or higher. 15 credits per semester is the average to get to 120 credits by the end of 8 semesters, which is the majority of students need 120 credits to graduate. So 12 credits is the minimum full time. I always recommend 15 to 17 to start a semester to give your student flexibility. So helping them remember some of these metrics can really remind them um, to kind of stay on track with credits. On the day of their registration, all students will be allowed to register for up to 17 credits. At the end of registration, priority registration, when all registration times have been open, they will get a bump to 19 credits so they can take up to 19 credits for and register for up to 19 credits. I'm noticing a typo. This will actually happen the end of day on November 14th, not 19th. I'll correct that before you send those out, Penny. A note about wait lists. Wait lists are not available for classes that have co-requisites. So a chemistry class does not also have, won't have a wait list because it has a co-requisite of a lab and our little system can't handle it. So if the class fills up there and it's not available, they can register for another class and keep an eye on the first class to see if a seat opens up when somebody else changes their schedule. Most classes do have wait lists and do not have co-requisites, but students can only waitlist for up to 3 classes. Waitlisted classes are not part of their registered credit hours. So when I say they need to be in 12 credits, if they're registered in three wait lists, that does not mean that they're hitting their 12 credits because that's outside of the 12 credits they need to actively be enrolled in. And again, you don't have to know all this stuff, just kind of giving you some parameters. So 3 waitlisted classes is the max. And if they're already registered for one section of the class, they can't also waitlist for another. So if they want this Spanish class at a certain time, they can't register for the same Spanish class at a different time and waitlist for the preferred time. So where are advisors during all this? A quick Google search with WaveSync Advising Tulane will show all of our active and up and coming events, including drop-in hours and late night advising and all the fun registration stuff that we're doing. We work by one-on-one appointments scheduled with advisors on their calendars, either in person or virtually, up to 2 weeks in advance. Some students panic when they see like no more appointments in November on our system, but it's really only showing the next 2 weeks. So if they check in the morning, they're probably going to see the next day of appointments available to them for appointments. And I would encourage them, even if they haven't seen us yet, to go ahead and make that appointment after registration and then use our drop-in hours if they need support during registration, and then plan to have that kind of post-registration meeting afterwards. But we do a lot of one-on-one appointments. We obviously have a lot of traffic during this 2 week period that we are actively in. So tell your students to be patient, check back regularly. Sometimes people cancel and a new spot opens up, and it's kind of first come, first serve in terms of meeting appointment, one-on-one appointments. Virtual advisor, our whole team works on virtual advising. We are available from 1 to 4 daily online. Again, our website, virtual advising, links are all there from the 1 to 4 period. Peer advisors are available from 4 to 6 virtually as well. So that whole period 1 to 6 is covered between staff and peer advisors. We have events, like I mentioned, in WaveSync. Most of our in-person drop-in hours are available all next week, Monday through Thursday, 1 to 4, both at the Hub Garage and here in Mussafer Hall. And then our peer advisors are always downstairs as well in Mussafer Hall and available for in-person drop-ins between 9 and 4 most days. They're students too, so some days they are out and about with their classes, but for the most part, we have coverage from 9 to 4, Monday through Friday in person, and 4 to 6 virtually, Monday through Friday. So these are our drop-in times that I've already mentioned and their locations. I love our late night advising We used to do it 7 to 10, but we found advisors are way too tired for that time of night. So we moved it this year to 6 to 8 on Wednesday, November 12th at the Hub Garage. It's a really fun kind of way for them to stop by, do some homework, check in for an appointment, and figure out their scheduling questions. This is the day before freshmen register, most freshmen register, so this tends to be a busy time, and lots of students are finally like kind of getting it all together. So we don't need an appointment for this, but it is first come, first serve. In the most cases, we're available in different places on campus during these drop-ins. We can really focus on quick questions and registration issues. If your student is like, I don't know what to do or how to get to an advisor, I want to plan out all 4 years. Drop-ins might not be the best place for planning out a full 4 year schedule. But certainly to get through registration errors or questions or concerns, we're here for it. Big picture conversations and scheduling tweaks can be addressed in one-on-one appointments after priority registration. And then leadership, myself included, are usually on hands for high-level concerns. So if your student is like in another world and registration is the last thing on their mind because they've got other stuff going on, oftentimes it's best just to reach out to me or reach out to someone on our leadership team directly, so that they get that direct support because our team is really kind of wrapped up in supporting registration, and sometimes an email or a phone call just doesn't get answered fast enough. So sometimes just calling our office and talking to our Miss Vernas, who will be happy to talk to you on the phone, and letting them know that you need somebody to meet with your student about some higher level issues outside of registration. Just cut through the noise and come straight to us. These are some of the links to some of the services I've talked about tonight. These are the summer classes, ideas, planning, different resources that Tulane has for students. Students might be thinking about transferring credit next summer and how to begin that process. Again, none of that has to get worked out today, but these are all things that eventually might come up in the conversations as your student builds their academic plan. These are all the links to the different resources that I've discussed tonight. Your students' degree work audit specifically for them is in their Gibson portal, but general information about degree works can also be found on the registrar's website. The university catalog, again, has all major, minor, and certificate requirements. It's getting prettier and prettier every year and easier to navigate. But I think that the catalog is a great resource. The schedule of classes is where they will search, add, drop, and register and submit their registration. The academic calendar is when certain decision points need to be made. This is that add deadline, the drop deadline each semester, which I'll actually list a couple things for next semester, well, for this semester on a next slide, but the academic calendars are important for students to be aware of. More and more, there is very little flexibility with missing deadlines just because you forgot or didn't push the button. So students really need to kind of be aware of all of the spring calendar dates moving into spring. And honestly, my team constantly sends emails with like all of those dates listed. So if they just flag their welcome back email at the beginning of spring semester from my office, they'll usually have a majority of the information they need to make those decisions at the right time. Offices that place holds. So some students do have registration holds on their accounts. 9 times out of 10, at this point, if your student is new to Tulane, the hold is specific to an accounts receivable hold or a student immunization hold. These are often very easy to address, but this is the only mechanism these offices have to address these important issues. So if your student does say, oh my gosh, I opened Gibson and it looks like I have a hold, I would, this is where parents usually do come in, especially when it comes to billing or health records. I would highly recommend you try to get your student, nail down your student and have them walk you through what they're seeing and what might be missing so that they can get the information they need to the correct office and have their registration hold lifted. Um, knowing that today, with a whole week left to plan for it before they register, will help them feel less stressed on the day they register. And if worse comes to worse and they have to register later because these holds need to get addressed in specific ways, again, don't panic. We will work with them. There's always ways to put together schedules, and departments are happy to support students who need it after registration as well. So, your student is almost done with their first semester in many cases. I know you might not all be first year student parents, but these are the dates that are coming up for this fall. November 3rd, priority registration has begun. Right now, only seniors really have registered, but we have that happening for the next 2 weeks. The last day of classes is December 5th. Students have exam periods anywhere from December 8th to December 13th, and final grades will be due on December 15th. Our office closes for winter break by December 23rd. Technically, many of our advisors will be taking off and taking a well-deserved break after December 19th. So if there's a lot of business to take care of in December, try to get your student reaching out to us and meeting with us in that December period before the 19th. All right, Penny, I am ready for questions. This is my direct information, both my phone number and my email. So if you have follow-up, please go ahead and jot down my information.
Okay. So, one person is asking if, well, a couple of people um, have asked if the students get this webinar, or sort of how do the students get the how to prepare information. So they would have first received all of this information when they were entering students in the
Mhm.
summer before, so they learned about registration. How else do students glean information about sort of the how-tos of registering for classes?
Yeah, a lot of it will happen in meetings. Our first year team has been reaching out to students since the end of August to invite them in. And one of our kind of things on our checklist for our first year students is, of course, to show them like how to think about the catalog, how to use the degree works audit, and how to draft like a first schedule. So yes, this information is given to them. I have offered this webinar to students previously, and I usually don't get very many people who show up to them. So I haven't offered this particular webinar this year, but generally these are all the pieces of the conversation that we have with our students when we meet with them. And we also do email them, not in a checklist, but we do kind of give them a step-by-step instructions in their emails as well, about deadlines, how to prepare for registration, and those kinds of things. So they're giving it to it in different ways. They also have in their TIDES classes, their peer mentors in each TIDES class will usually stand up and talk a little bit about registration as well.
So there are a couple of questions. What if a student has their ticket time is while they are doing during one of their classes or a midterm exam? So how
Yeah,
do they
so
manage that?
so ticket times can't be changed. I have had this question come up. Students should first, if they see that conflict coming, talk to the professor. The professor with a majority of first year students, especially, but any students will generally be familiar with this kind of bottleneck that happens, and allow students to use their computers for a few moments and those kind of things. The actually registering and pushing the button doesn't take a lot of time. It's just that kind of cleaning it up and getting it ready that that can take a little extra time. So just encouraging your student to do that the night before and get things as ready as they can, and then making sure sometime this week or early next that they've spoken to their professor about the conflict to see what can get worked out. But those ticket times are given by the registrar's office, and they're, as far as I understand, very unchangeable.
So Could you talk about when the registration dates are for first year, second year, junior, and seniors? Um,
Yeah, so the ticket times are just based on credit hours. I can throw, I think it's in the webinar as well, or like one of the links. But if you just look up time ticket Tulane, you'll get a hit on the credit hour expectations. So it usually is seniors, basically the people with the highest number of credits and closest to graduation will register first because obviously they are most in need of the classes in front of them. That starts today, Wednesday. And then again, what is a junior, what is a sophomore will kind of depend on number of credits each student has earned, but generally it kind of cascades over the next week. There are no ticket times over the weekend. So somebody registering at 4 o'clock on Friday and 8 a.m. on Monday are only registering about an hour apart from one another, right? So we have seniors and juniors mostly registering this week, and sophomores and freshmen mostly registering next week.
okay. Um, Regarding the holds that might be placed on a student's account, I think that I'm pretty sure the answer to this is no, but do the parents also get the email about a hold?
My understanding would be no.
Okay.
And in fact, if your student hasn't kind of clicked through certain things to give a named individual access to billing and account information, there is a parent portal for billing, but if I think the student has to give some
Yeah,
sort of permission before
yeah,
you can access the billing. So that's kind of where, while billing is not the same as accounts receivable, it's kind of where the hold comes from, is usually something lingering on the bill.
yeah.
So,
And that is where the student can go to the accounts receivable website. And there's
yeah.
a big button for students and one for parents. And the student can click through that to make anybody an authorized user. And that would allow them to, it sends the person a message that says, and I think it assigns them like a temporary password, and then you can set it to something that you choose. And then that would give you that they are giving that person the access to become an authorized user, and then the parent can use that to see the bills and pay them online. So
But
so that may be something to ask your student about to make sure that they've cleared any holds or let you know that they've given you that access if you didn't already have it, so that you could help them in paying that and getting that cleared before their registration time.
I doubt that you'd be on the email list itself for those
Right,
notifications, but you
because
can
of
look
just the
in.
privacy guidelines.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Another question is that our daughter's advisor left Tulane to go to another university a week or so ago. She's not certain who she should contact or how to navigate in that situation.
Yeah, I actually personally emailed everybody who was working with Anil. He's gone off to work with his move with his family and take care of his older parents. So we're really happy for him. But Anil's students are well taken care of. They actually have I've given them all a link to meet with somebody on our leadership team or first available on our first year team. So they actually have like 11 advisors that they have would have access to with that link. If they missed that email, that was probably sent October, I want to say 25th. If they missed that email, they certainly can email me directly and ask for some guidance. Anyone can always email advising@tulane.edu, and those emails get forwarded directly to our leadership team. And when they were students who were working with an advisor who has recently left, those are sent to the leadership team, and we kind of just work on those one at a time. So they're welcome to reach out to me directly, the advising office. More widely, they're welcome to use our drop-in advising, and they really should be able to meet one-on-one with anybody they need to. But their new advisor will be assigned the week after registration.
Okay. We've got two other questions that are really specific. So you might have to tell us if that's something that
Okay.
students should take up with their advisor more specifically. Um, Our sophomore student is a primary major in political science in the School of Liberal Arts with a secondary major in psychology. He wants to do psychology as a double major, but not a dual degree, i.e., he does not want to pursue a BS in psychology along with his BA. Is it possible for him to do the double major but not a dual degree, or what does that mean? If he would, does it mean he would not need to complete general requirements for science and engineering? Or
Yeah, I think that generally there's no requirement that somebody doing two majors, nobody needs to do a dual degree. And for those of you new to this conversation, most people are just doing double majors. One degree is 120 credits, multiple majors listed on the transcript, right? The degree itself is whatever major is listed first. So if your student is choosing to do political science first, and then they will earn a Bachelor of Arts, and their secondary major would be psychology, that is possible. The math requirements, which are pretty specific to my science majors, are built into the psychology major. So any requirements built into that secondary major are still requirements. The school requirements are built in to or connected to the student's primary major. So like you said, political science. So I'd have to look at it all together and meet with an advisor to determine and help your student decide what's the best choice for them. It doesn't, putting psychology as a second major does not always mean getting out of some of the math requirements. Because psychology itself builds math into their major requirements, it makes it a little bit trickier. So any questions about the requirements would need to go then to the department if they're trying to kind of not do certain things. But the dual degree is not required. You can still do the double major. A dual degree means 2 degrees. It means 150 credits, which is a lot of credits to do in a 4-year period. So most people, 9 times out of 10 students are earning a single degree with multiple majors when they do 2 majors.
okay. So another question is, does a course that is in the schedule of classes shown as having an quote attribute SOPA race and inclusion, SOPA race and inclusion, meet the core curriculum race and inclusion requirement for the Newcomb-Tulane College core curriculum? Is that how that would be
Somebody
labeled?
is doing her homework. I don't know if your student is doing enough here, but you have definitely nailed all of the tough questions. The SOPA, which is the School of Professional Advancement Race and Inclusion Requirement, much to our chagrin, has the same name as our race and inclusion requirement. So the attribute listed as SOPA is only for students in that particular school and will only fulfill the requirement for students in that school. One way your students will find out or verify that the classes they are enrolling in fits the requirement that they think it is once they've registered to open up their degree audit and see if that class is going into that particular slot that they planned it for. That's my like down and dirty answer for getting that figured out. But like, yes, we can also look at the attributes and help them ahead of time. But one other way to check is running the audit after registration to see if everything's kind of going into the requirements that they believed it should. But in this case, the answer would be no, it does not meet the Newcomb-Tulane College requirement.
Yeah, so just for everybody to remember, SOPA, SOPA, is School of Professional Advancement. So that's a different school entirely from the undergraduate Newcomb-Tulane College. So, um, so I'm going to put out a last call for questions now. So if you have any other questions, then please type them in now. If you have any feedback that you'd like to offer us and you want to put a comment in the question box, that's welcome. You can do that now. I always offer too that if you have specific questions about the content of the webinar, then you should email, the presenter. And so that's Heather, and her email address is there on the screen, hcooper2@tulane.edu. If, however, you have feedback about the webinars in general, or if you have a suggestion for a topic for us to do in the future, then you're welcome to send that to me, and you just email that to families plural, families@tulane.edu. So here is one last question, Heather. I think this is the last one. My daughter's a sophomore. Is it required for her to complete the race and inclusion requirement before going study abroad for fall of her junior year? She was told that it was, but they're not seeing that like listed online, I guess.
Yeah, it's highly recommended, but there's no consequence. So we recommend it, and I believe it's written on the audit, like, the goal is to finish it by end of sophomore year, but I don't, but there's no there would be no negative consequence to taking it upon return.
So we have two last questions. How many days is a ticket time? I'm not sure if that question.
Um, yeah, an individual's ticket time is one date and one time, but the ticket times open based on credits starting basically November 3rd and 4th is graduate students and student athletes, and then 5th, which is today, moving to next Thursday is 1 hour, usually every 1 or 2 hours, new sets of students are able to register. And this is mostly because our registration system would kind of crash if everybody had the same ticket time. So it just kind of lays it all out. So there's a little bit of 8, a little bit of 9, 10, so forth. So each day has new ticket times between 8 and 4 p.m. with no new ticket times over the weekend.
Okay. How can a student tell if a class, like a tier one writing class, also satisfies another requirement like a social science?
Yeah, so the attributes are listed on all of the classes. You bring up a really important point that is very hard to explain and is kind of out of context in this conversation. But Tier 1 writing is one of our proficiency requirements. So every first year student should finish their first tier writing by the end of their first year. It's one of our proficiency requirements, and things like social science and textual requirement or lab science, those are our distribution requirements. Those two things cannot overlap. So when a student sees multiple attributes listed like social science and tier one writing, the requirement that will be fulfilled is going to be proficiency first, and then text, and then the social science in that case it's only going to do one of those two things. So tier one writing or social science, and usually it will pull it into the writing first. So the way that they can tell is that it's listed on the class, and after they register, the audit will pull it into the category. But if they still have questions, they should reach out to our office.
Okay. Okay, well, everybody, we're right at time. And so I want to thank Heather for presenting all this information. Thank you so much. And I would just like to thank all of the family members who joined us tonight. And again, just to ask you, we see some emojis here giving a thumbs up or some other feedback. So we are grateful for your feedback and just invite you to, again, if you've got questions or feedback specifically about the content, then send that to Heather. If you have remaining thoughts about the webinar series or suggestions for other topics, then email that to families@tulane.edu. Our next webinar will be on the Freeman School of Business study abroad and exchange programs. And so that was announced in the newsletter. It was announced last week in the newsletter and it went out today as well. You can always find the schedule of upcoming webinars and the archive of the past webinars on the Family Programs website. It's families.tulane.edu. You go to the Communications tab and then open up the link to webinars and tutorials. And you always see the upcoming ones listed first and then the archive of the past ones. So usually both the video of the webinar and the slides are linked there for each past webinar. So we will also announce a webinar on the Newcomb-Tulane College study abroad programs in December. So look for those if your student is not in the business school and is looking at other options, then that's where we'll present that information in December. So thanks again, everyone. We appreciate your time and hope that you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Bye, everyone.